In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White. Tonight on America in Black and White, we explore a part of community life that most people don't think about until something goes wrong. Yet it shapes the safety, dignity, and livability of every neighborhood in this country. Code compliance is more than citations, ordinance, and regulations. At its best, it is the front line of community care. It is where policy meets people, where enforcement meets empathy, and where leadership can transform entire cities. Our guest tonight embodies that transformation. Brian C. Morris is not just a director of code compliance. He is a visionary redefining what community standards, neighborhood revitalization, and public service can look like. With more than 13 years of local government and over 20 years of real estate and development, Brian has built a national reputation for innovation, compassion, and results. From Dallas to South Fulton to Garland, he has led teams, rebuilt systems, and created programs that don't just enforce the rules, they uplift people. His work reminds us that strong communities are not accidental. They are built house by house, block by block, relationship by relationship. And tonight, we get to hear the story behind the leader, the man shaped by Black history, inspired by Marcus Garvey, Barack Obama, and Malcolm X, and committed to using his gifts to strengthen the very communities he served. This is going to be powerful. This is going to be real. This is America in Black and White, and let's bring Brian C. Morris to the stage. Hello, sir.
Hey, good evening, Mr. King. How you doing?
I'm doing just excellent. Welcome to the show.
Oh man, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so is there anything you'd like to say to the audience before we get into the show?
Well, just want to say that I appreciate the warm introduction. And man, it's just a pleasure to be among you all, man. Welcome to all of the listeners here. I'm looking to just bring some insight into what we do. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on what we do in code enforcement and how it affects our communities. And I'm just looking forward to the conversation and you all joining us on this journey.
Well, I thank you so very kindly. And what we're going to start this off is I'd like to give people the opportunity to learn a little bit more about who you are and how you got to be where you are today. Let's start with who was Brian Morris before the titles, leadership roles, and the accolades?
Great question. Before the titles, the leadership, and the accolades, I was uh, born and raised in south of Atlanta, in College Park, Georgia. Just grew up as a 90s, 80s, 90s kid, listening to hip hop and learning my way around the city of Atlanta during a transformational time, a historic time, when we were around so much history, so much culture. When you talk about Outkast and Monica and TLC, all the musical genres, so def, we were just flooded with that culture and that black excellence. along with being in the epicenter of what was becoming Black Mecca, right? With the AUC centers that were, you know, just guideposts for us. So I was privileged to join, to grow up in the birthplace of civil rights and in the resurgence and emergence of Black culture during the 80s and the 90s. And so I was a part of that culture, just growing up in that era, and just trying to make my way. I went to graduate from high school and went to FAMU for a brief period of time, and had a great time down there. Had a great experience in HBCU culture. Much respect to my FAMU Rattlers. Um, and from there, I just matriculated right into the real estate field right out of college. At that point, had a strong entrepreneurial spirit, and just wanted to put those skills to use in working for myself. Um, Now, somewhere along the line, you all remember the historic economic crash in '07, '08 in real estate. And I was greatly affected by that in my business. And I had to pivot at that point, as we all do. You have a choice to either continue on a path, and you have choices to make that crossroads. And at that point, that's when I joined local government and put some of those real estate and construction skills to use. And I became a code enforcement officer. And from there, the rest has been history. I started a family in between there. I have a wife and a son who's now 14, my pride and joy. And we've just been building this as we go. And I've been blessed to work with some amazing teams and some great communities. And we've been able to together have a lasting impact in those communities that we served in.
Well, before I ask my next question, there is, I guess, there's someone speaking to you here in the chat. Emmanuel is on the screen there. He says, "Yo."
Hey, Emmanuel, how you doing, sir? Thanks for joining us.
And so, can you tell us what early experiences shaped your understanding of community and responsibility?
Mm. Man, another great question. So it's it's interesting how life, you know, your experiences during life can shape you in ways that you don't realize until much later. Um, One of the things that sticks with me from when I was heavily, knee deep into the real estate renovation, construction, remodeling, and we were going to some of these historic Black neighborhoods, like the historic West End, where my big mom is from, and we were revitalizing these beautiful 1920s houses. And what it made me realize is the impact and the importance of community. The fact that us as a people learning to take care of our own community is essential. We often look at the term gentrification, and we talk about that as a bad thing, which I get. In some cases, it is, Charles. The flip side to that coin is when I look back at when I went to go visit my big mama in the '80s. That was during the height of the crack epidemic, and we couldn't see how beautiful that neighborhood was because it was overrun with those plagues of the community at the time. It was not well kept. There was not a lot of pride in those communities, although it was 100% Black owned. Now you fast forward and you go back into that community 10, 15, 20 years later, and those houses are now immaculate, beautiful, and worth $500,000. So what it taught to me, reflecting on my real estate path along with my code enforcement path, is that if we take pride and ownership in our own communities, we don't have to worry about gentrification. We don't have to worry about anybody coming to take anything from us because we can benefit from the value that comes with ownership and economic empowerment. So, that kind of ties both of my two career paths together, and how we can influence our own neighborhoods, and just by taking good care of where we live, taking pride of ownership, and not letting anyone dissuade us from doing that.
Brian, I want you to answer this question for me because you make a very, very good point when you talk about that. And the thing that kind of has me baffled right now that I'm not, well, I understand it, but I'm not actually able to validate what I'm saying.
Mm.
That is, we're about community here, and this is what that's why we have you here, because you've done a great job when it comes to dealing with the community and helping the community to stay stable as best as possible. But when we talk about what you were talking about, the West End here in Atlanta, um, you know, I'm not from Atlanta, but I understand the historical context of that particular area. And when I look at that now and understand, like most people didn't understand, like people didn't understand what it was to primarily to do a lot of the do's and don'ts when it come to
Mm.
taking control of your community and owning your community and just making sure that everything about your community was your community. When I look at that area now and what was happening, this has probably been since you left. I don't know how long ago since you moved to Texas, but um, now the area definitely doesn't look the same. The
No.
revitalization is not revitalization, it's actually gentrification. And those people have been forced to move because they couldn't afford taxes. But I don't know if you know about this or not, but as of a couple of months ago, you have major corporations that have set foot in that area.
Mm.
And now they're buying
Right.
up all of that property and pushing the people out. And so when you think about that, is that not because a lot of people didn't quite understand maybe what it was to deal with real estate and like having to try to do what's best to push back and to keep their properties being pushed out of their properties? What are some of the things that you can tell our people that's watching now how this works and what they should be doing in
Mm.
advance?
Wow, that's a great question, Charles, and a lot to unpack with that. Very, you have so many different competing interests when you talk about real estate development, gentrification versus redevelopment, right? And it's a
Right.
thin line between those two. Um, my personal view on that is that as a people, no matter what color you are, certain forces in the market are going to come. They're going to, if the environment is attractive enough. One of the things I learned about from the development side is that, a lot of times you hear people saying, "Well, hey, we want a Whole Foods in our area, right?
Right.
We want a
Right.
Trader Joe's. We want this. Why are we always getting the dollar store? Why are we always getting the Family Dollar and the liquor store, right? XYZ." So from the development side, we learned that these companies have formulas. And so Trader Joe's, for instance, their formula may say they want within a 3 square mile radius, they want salaries of $140,000 average per household. They want a 40% college degree rate, right, in that area. And of course, they look at other demographics, density, crime, and those other variables. They won't move into your area unless you can produce that first. If you don't have 140,000 household income on average in that area, they won't move in there. Forget about it. They're going to Johns Creek. They're going to a different area, whatever your suburb is, the nice part of town. That's where they're going.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a double-edged sword, because as we boost the prospects of those areas, as we increase our education, our economic power in those areas, it brings development. The best advice I see, I don't think you can stop that, because those market forces are untouchable. They're gonna come. If those numbers fit, they're gonna come in that area. Our best advice is to be a part of it, right? If your property goes up from $100,000 when it was the hood, if it was $100,000 then, and somebody comes and brings you 500,000, you can capitalize on that investment. That's a return on your investment. Now, the downside to that is the sense of community, and I understand that fully, right? This is where, in my case, Big Mama raised us. I went over to the West End, and she kept us all over there. So there's a sense of community that's displaced when that happens. I just don't know if we can stop that. The best we can do is try to advocate for policies to help, and this goes back to the code enforcement role, programs that will help elderly citizens to stay in their homes, right? How can we get your front yard manicured? How can we get some minor painting and some infrastructure and some things done to help you not be taken from your home in that way due to non-compliance? And then, of course, you have government programs similar to the city of Atlanta where they will pause some of the increase in taxes for senior citizens. So more progressive cities are implementing those safeguards so that you're not, if you choose to take advantage of that 300% increase in your property value, that's great. You can go retire and you take that, and that's a family nest egg that you can pass down. But if you choose to stay, then we want to make it possible and not impossible for you to be able to stay in the home that you plan to grow, live, and even die in if you want to. Right. So it's a fine line, Charles, in trying to encourage redevelopment, because what comes with redevelopment is less crime. It comes more resources, the things that we all want. Right. But also with that comes increased property taxes and increased expectations on how you need to maintain your area so it's not considered a slum.
Now, this is now what I'm about to say is not what you do in code enforcement, but I will say this. I think that even when we have some neighborhoods that are still valuable with those checkpoints that you mentioned, they still wouldn't get those stores. But my premise is, if we knew better about our communities and we kept and built our communities, we don't have to have those stores. So why support them when we could actually build our own stores? The thing is, and again, this is not what you do in code enforcement.
Let's talk about it. I like the question though, because I got something in mind that popped up. So let's
see, because this is the thing, that when we want to do our own thing, we're kept from doing it because we're not allowed to do it. Now that's dealing with local, county, and state governments. Because if they allowed, and if we wanted to build all of our own grocery stores, our retail stores, things of that nature, and keep out the cheap stores and the stores that are tearing down the neighborhoods, that would mean that we wouldn't be giving them our dollars. And so that's the whole premise. The premise is to tear down and to destroy our communities, to force you to go and get what they want you to have. That's the problem.
Man, that's a very insightful point. And so you led in the intro when we talked earlier. I told you one of my, I wanted to dig a little bit deeper when you asked me who inspired me, who in Black history inspired me, and one of my heroes is Marcus Garvey.
Right.
And for that reason of self-determination and do for self.
Right.
And so that's an issue that goes back hundreds of years, right? Why we're not in a position of economic empowerment where we can have more ownership. And so that's a discussion I have with people often, particularly when let's say we have an uprising. We've had some uprisings in the past couple of years when something happens, whether it's police brutality or whether it's some type of injustice or perceived injustice that we feel. And it's the same thinking behind it. People often ask, well, why do we burn up our own community? Why do we tear up our own stuff? I hear that often, and I understand it. I get that. But the key word is our.
Yes.
It's a sense of ownership. The fact that we don't have a sense of ownership in general, it leads to that response. I'm not burning up mine. I'm not tearing up my stuff because this is not my stuff.
Right.
That goes back. That's a huge issue when it comes to our sense of ownership and the fact that, if we're able to come together, any community, right? I see it with my Latino brothers and sisters. They're able to come together, and I respect and admire that. And we need to emulate that, right? Not out of a sense of any type of separation or bigotry, but just everybody needs their own. We need to be able to go spend Black dollars if we choose to, or white, wherever we want to go. But we don't have those options because we haven't done the work to collectively put ourselves in a position to be able to own blocks and shopping centers and neighborhoods. We haven't done that work. Doesn't mean it's too late to do it, but that's what time we need to be on if we want to have that kind of change and have more of a say when it comes to who comes into our neighborhood. You can't put a Family Dollar on this area, on this parcel, on this street in Charles if you own that land.
Right.
Right. You get to say who comes there. I don't want a liquor store. I don't want a Dollar Tree. I want what I want, right? I want to open this up to whatever is best serving the community. And we have that say if we have that economic firepower.
Well, I hope that the people in that part of Atlanta are ready, because they landed here in Atlanta like about maybe a month ago. And so it's about to totally take shape in an ugly way. And so I'm just waiting to see what the city as a whole and in general, especially for that area, what the people are going to do. Because this deserves some counteraction, because we all know what's happening right about now. And it's not the first time, and it's not something new, because you've got corporations coming all from places like Canada, Japan, China, Russia. All these places are landing in places here around the country in many metropolitan cities, and creating subdivisions and only leasing the houses, but people can't own them. But people that wanted the property, they won't sell the property to them.
Man, that's a huge issue. I dealt with that and you mentioned South Fulton. So South Fulton is in Georgia.
Yes,
that's
I
where
used to live there.
Yes, sir. So I served there for about 4.5, almost 5 years as they were beginning. That's the newest city in Georgia. It's about 8 years old now. Going on 9. So that was a huge issue in code enforcement, and we fought it there. The corporations were so bad that, and they had so much money, Charles. Here's the thing, rewind it back a step further. Time back to 07, 08, right? When the market crashed and the hedge funds, and you had millions and millions and billions of dollars that came in and bought up this real estate in order to sell and to lease it. And so we saw some of that once that ran out, once that supply of existing inventory ran out, then they saw it was so lucrative. Well, hell, we'll just build an entire subdivision and we'll put it for lease. So their pockets were so long that there was a small subdivision in South Fulton off Button Road that they forgot about. And the grass grew up as high as tall as me and you. And it was fresh outside. And these were brand new $300,000, $400,000 houses. And when we finally got in contact with the owner, we put a belt to him, right? We put a boot to him, charged him some money, had him in court and holding him accountable. Their excuse to us was like, hey, we have thousands of properties. I forget the number, 20, 30,000 properties around the country. We forgot about this $4 or $5 million we had sitting over here in this little city called South Fulton. So that's what we're up against when it comes to that. There's been some talk of federal legislation limiting corporate entities that partake in that practice. But money talks in government, right? Lobbyists rule the day. So it's something that we combat every day, and it reduces our opportunity to own a part of the American dream, which is home ownership, because there's less supply. Prices go up, they corner the market. So it's a pretty vicious cycle when you're talking about that corporate ownership of single family property on a large, massive scale.
So we got a few comments here in the chat, especially one for Miss Mina. I don't want her to think that we forgot about her, because she said more than one comment. I don't think she think we was listening. But this first one here I put on the screen. This says code enforcement is a driver of community improvement and economic development.
Absolutely. And that gentleman right there is one of the best he knows that well. I know that company, Metric One Training, is one of the finest um, in the business, and absolutely right. We are a key economic driver for economic development, right, and community change. No doubt about it. Without many cities would not exist. We're silent. We're behind the scenes to a certain extent. A lot of people don't understand fully what we do. But once I often say once you lock up the bad guys and you put out the fires,
Mhm.
if you don't have code, you don't have a city. You
That's
have
true.
chaos in your city. Tall grass, trash, blighted properties, dilapidated structures. So economic development all ties into that. Reduction in crime ties into that. If you have blighted structures, you open up the door to what they call the young folks call a trap house,
Mhm.
right? You open up the door to all kinds of criminal activities that take place, and it has an echo effect, right? It's contagious. Good behavior is contagious. If your neighbor plants a flower garden, your significant other may see it out there, and now they put the pressure on you to go plant a flower garden and put some mulch out, right? Because the neighbors are looking good.
Mhm.
If you on the other side, if your neighbor is not cutting the grass and they have junk vehicles, they're working on their cars, right? Then your incentive may decrease. It does decrease to go out and really take pride in your neighborhood, because when you step outside, you're looking at a lot of blight when you walk out. So it's all contagious, and it all has an economic development impact, um, and an impact on the strength and the character of the community.
And we got this from Miss Mina. She's putting 5 or 6 comments in here. She says hello, and she was saying hello again. Say
Yeah,
hi
Mina.
or like. She wanted to say hello.
Thanks for joining us, Mina.
So, so can you tell us, growing up, what did neighborhood mean to you?
Neighborhood, as a kid, growing up, teenager, it was a sense of community, right? It was a little bit different, I would say, than it is in most places now. We all talk about going outside and coming back when the street light came on, and having neighbors around you that could hold you accountable, where you knew that whatever you did when you were out there in the streets, right, playing, doing whatever kids do, that it's going to meet you or beat you back to your home. And you likely would have a belt switch or some other type of whipping device waiting on you when you got back if you acted a fool out there. Um, so that community, that stability, really meant a lot. When I was growing up, I moved to Clayton County. For those that don't know, it's not the right now. Clayton County is the largest black population in Georgia by percentage. And I failed to mention South Fulton is the largest black city in the country at 92, 93%, right? Largest black city in the country. Right now, Clayton County is the largest black county in the state, I want to say, by percentage. It wasn't like that when I moved there,
Right.
right? So we've all heard the phenomenon of white flight. And so grew up in a mixed community, and we saw it shift from when I got there in the early 80s to when I left there in the early 90s. A dramatic shift. It went from 1090 to close to 9010. And those that hadn't left is because they couldn't leave just yet.
Right.
Right. So we've seen that effect on our neighborhoods. But all in all, it was still a stable place. Um, I think there's something that's missing in a lot of neighborhoods right now. The way they're designed, the way they're put together, it doesn't lend to a sense of community. In some cases, it's a money grab, right? The on the development side, the developer will take a piece of land. It's 40 acres, and they will clear cut it, and they will make it as flat as possible, and they will cram as many houses as they can on a quarter or third of an acre or eighth of an acre lot, right? So it's the character. Some of that disappears when you do when you do that to a neighborhood. It's just a cookie cutter type of situation. So that's one of the biggest differences I see in how we came up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and how the neighborhoods have changed a little bit.
So, when did you first realize you had a calling towards public service?
Great question. I think it was somewhere during the journey, right? As I mentioned, I took code enforcement as a job, right? Because we were, I just had my son Charles in 2011, and to that point, I was still hustling, right? I'm trying to make an entrepreneurial, dime out of a dollar out of a dime, right? That was my focus. I would never work. I would never go work a 9 to 5. That was my mindset. And my wife thought otherwise, right? Particularly when my son came. She's like, dude, you need to go get a regular paycheck and insurance and all those things, right? We're making ends meet, but it's barely. Rent's due on the 1st, and you come in, with some money on the 30th. So, I took the job to take the job. I needed it. I needed some stability, and somewhere down the line, I fell in love with code, and I saw it was misunderstood, it was undervalued, underappreciated, underfunded, under everything. But I saw the impact that we could have, and this is just me as an officer. I started out boots on the ground for several years, and I saw how we could take a community and just with the educational part of it, right? Education before citation. That's a phrase that was coined by my brother in code, Anthony Mullins. Just by educating people on why we're doing what we're doing. Why is it important for you to keep your property clean and up to code and look in a certain way? And you could come back in a matter of a year from a neighborhood that you would call a C neighborhood. I would grade them, right? A loose grade. You could take a C neighborhood, and after being in that neighborhood for 6 months to a year, that C neighborhood now is looking like a B plus neighborhood. Property values are going up. There's more pride. It's no longer the slums. You're by indirectly chasing out some of the negative elements that may be in that neighborhood because they stick out like a sore thumb now. The trap house and the houses of ill repute, right? They're now sticking out because everybody is in line. So, they stick out like a sore thumb. So just seeing the impact and having my elders and seniors in the community and just community, just residents in general, making those comments on how they appreciate the work that we're doing. And I saw that it was an impact and something that needs to have a larger voice to it, more resources allocated to code enforcement professionals, and we need advocates for that. So I saw the need, Charles, and I saw the impact that we could have if done correctly, and the negative impact when it's done incorrectly.
Let's transition over to your work as Director of Code Compliance in Garland. What does a Director of Code Compliance actually do on a day-to-day basis?
Yes, sir. So many hats, man, many hats. You see, I'm still at work now. It's 6 o'clock. Well, it's 5:30 Central Time. So I look at it as a business, right? So my entity, being the Director of Code Compliance, or wherever I'm in that director seat, is the CEO of Code Compliance, right? So I'm personnel management, policies and procedures, budget management, budget allocation. So I'm the liaison between City Hall and my team. And so my mission, anywhere that I go, my goal is to create the best code enforcement department in the country. That's my standard. I come into that seat with that standard in mind. That's what we want to do. And so it's training the team. It's untraining the team. It's training the council members and the different stakeholders in the community about what we do, educating them about what we do and what we don't do, what we can do and what we can't do, right? What our limitations are. Um, so it's about relationship building with my team, vertically and horizontally. My peer departments that I rely on to work in partnership with us, um, supporting my team, and also carrying out the vision of my leadership, my city manager, my mayor, and council, carrying out their vision and translating that vision to our team and bring it into effect. So it's about implementation. It's about uh, ultimately getting results at the end of the day and making an impact for the community.
So, what makes Garland unique compared to the other cities you've served?
That's a great question. So every city is unique. So, my first city was a town of 17,000, Fairburn, Georgia. Moved out to South Fulton, Georgia, right next door, 120,000, up and coming city. Um, 90% black, all black staff, all black council and mayor, right? Our former mayor called it Wakanda, right? That was his running joke. It was Wakanda forever. So different dynamics, right? Different culture. I grew up in that area. I know the streets like the back of my hand. I know the people. I know the culture. So next stop was moving out to Dallas. Monstrosity of a city, ninth biggest city in the country, at 1.3, 1.4 million people. We had the largest code enforcement team in the country at 500 full-time employees. Different culture, black, Mexican, white. It was a lot more diverse. So learning that culture, learning the needs of those communities that differ. Many things remain the same, but a lot of things differ from community to community. Now, Garland, I've been out here, it will be a year, a week from today. And so very much different. It's predominantly white, maybe 60%. Do have a relatively diverse community. We have Hispanic, we have Vietnamese, a large Vietnamese population, and we have African American population. So different needs, language barriers, economic barriers, cultural differences on how you're accustomed to um, doing certain things, right? Taking care of your property, taking care of your home, taking care of your business. So breaking through those cultural differences and being able to still get the mission accomplished is a challenge. It's a different challenge, and it's like that no matter where you go. The dynamics differ, and we have to, as me as a leader coming in, I have to adjust. I can't expect them to adapt to me and say, hey, look, I won a championship here in this jurisdiction. I won a championship here. I know all the answers, and here's the playbook, right? Because no, the situation changes, the terrain changes, the personnel changes, and so I have to adapt and go with that flow. Learn first, and then implement what works for this particular situation.
Tell us about the diverse cultures. When you talk about the language barriers, when you think about the cultural differences and how people do things, how does that affect your work as code enforcement?
It does. It definitely has an impact, Charles. You know, for one, just the language barrier. We can't assume that when we knock on the door, that the person behind it will be able to communicate with us freely, right? They will understand what we're saying, even if they speak a portion of English, right, enough to get by. But this is their second or third language, so they may not understand the nuances between what we're trying to get them to do. So we have interpreters, we have virtual tools that we can use to interpret what's being said, to get the language across, get the message across. We're printing in different language to make sure that we're reaching out to these different groups. When we do communications, we had a big story now that we're working on, a big initiative we're pushing. And when we put our communications out, we're reaching out to the Spanish speaking news, right? We put out press releases in all three of our main languages. And, so we can't just assume that everybody's going to get the message. We have to meet them exactly where they are and get that message to them. So it does bring some challenges because people are used to living in a certain culture, right? And we have to be sensitive to that. We have to understand that. But at the same time, my job is to get compliance. And no matter what language we're talking about, we have to conform to a certain standard. And so doing that with empathy, with education, but at the same time, results are what we're going to get at the end of the day.
Well, I think we can all gather, your empathy and your sympathy in doing your job, because I can see that when you say community, community is community. So with that being said, can you tell us, how do you balance enforcement with compassion?
Mm. That is, it's tough at times, man. Um, it's I equate it to Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense, right? The Secretary of State goes in with diplomacy, right? That's USAID. That's you're feeding the hungry, you're giving medicine, you're right. You're going in with flowers, and you're right. You're going in with that, trying to create goodwill. And then you have the enforcement side, which is the Department of Defense that goes in with enforcement. They go in with military force. And so that's a dramatic analogy, but that's kind of what we do. So our diplomacy side is we have cold care. So in each jurisdiction that I go to, we have some form of cold care, some form of community outreach and engagement. And we put programs together for those that if you cannot cut your grass or you need certain tasks to be completed for you, then we connect with volunteers, we connect with churches, fraternal organizations, anybody that wants to help. We create that umbrella organization and connect the resources with the need, right? So we go in with that first. Now, if you truly come to us and you can't do it, then we're going to find every means available that we can bring those resources to you, right? And so once we cross that bridge, and then we get to the enforcement part, if you don't fit that bill, that's not for everybody. That's for those that can't do. Now, if you're able-bodied and you just lazy, then that's a different story. That's the empathy is education first, but we're gonna get to enforcement a little bit faster. If you have the means and the ability to do it, then it's your responsibility to do that.
And so, yeah, we're going to get to the cold cares part a little bit later, because I think that's more than something I think people need to get an understanding
Yeah.
of. Thanks for
Yeah.
evoking that.
And Charles, I got one more point I want to make on that, on the empathy part, right? And this is what's difficult for some to understand, even myself, initially, that empathy is not just for the person, Mr. King, that has a violation, right? I want to take my time. I want to make sure that you have everything you need, right? Make sure we're taking our time with you. It's not just for you. We have to be empathetic to the other residents around you, right? So sometimes we see empathy through the eyes of the offending party, which is true. We want to exercise empathy, but I have 200, in my case, 250,000 residents. I have to look out for the 249,999 others that are having to live next to or across the street or driving by this blight that's bringing down their quality of life and their property values. So it cuts both ways. I can't be so empathetic to one that I'm empathetic to the public in general.
So, what are the biggest challenges facing urban neighborhoods today?
Oh man, you have quite a few. Biggest challenges that I see are you have a lack of ownership, lack of responsibility in some cases, right? Now there are areas where we see bright spots where redevelopment is taking place by us, grassroots efforts, and we want to encourage that. One of the biggest hits has been a reduction in funding recently on a federal level where many communities are, a lot of our programs specifically designed to help underprivileged areas, underserved, blighted areas, particularly through HUD, have been cut tremendously and are still threatening to be cut even further. So we're having to cut back on certain programs that house the homeless, feed the hungry, and take care of blighted properties. We're seeing less funds in the places that they're most needed. And so that's a vicious cycle. So as these cities hollow out, that's less tax revenue. Our cities are funded primarily on property taxes. And so when the property taxes go down, the property values go down, that's less money for a city to hire police, fire, code, parks, and everything else. And so that becomes a vicious cycle. The less you fund it, the less services you get, the more people move out, and it can spiral downwards if it's not, stopped in its tracks.
So, with all this good work that you brought to Garland, before you got to Garland, all this good work that you did, but you came there, and that's where you are now. What innovations have you brought to Garland's code compliance operations?
Hmm. Great question, man. So for me, it starts with the basics, foundation, SOPs. How do we conduct our normal practices? Can we streamline our processes? Can we get faster services? So one thing that comes to mind is we were taking too much time between the time that we issued our notices of violation saying, hey, you have to fix this property. We were giving too much empathy, Charles. We were giving second notice, third notice, final notice. And, we cut that time in half, right? By the time we give you your notice, we need you to clean it up in a certain amount of time. And if not, we're coming to abate. So as a result, we tripled our revenue, right? And in the first quarter that we implemented that, we tripled our revenue over any time period that we've ever done in the past 5 years, right? So we're bringing in funds, but we're also increasing the compliance time. We're beautifying our neighborhoods by increasing that compliance time or decreasing the compliance time.
So, when you're talking about you guys are losing services, but you brought pretty much a whole big innovation system with you, and you're in a place to where not only is the state one of the largest states in the country, maybe the third, but your city is also not so small.
Mm-hmm.
So to take away resources from you, how are you able to continue to do that great work with less
Mm.
resources?
Mm. Man, that's an insightful question, man. Charles, we have to stay lean and mean, right? And so I was spoiled a little bit in Dallas, where we had so many resources, huge city, but a huge employee count, right? So we had programs for every single item that we needed. But I'm used to working with a little bit less. So one of the things that we've done here is we have committees among our team. I believe in a team structure. I believe that when everybody buys in, we can make our 33 employees feel like 300, right? And so I challenge my team, staff level, to join these 6 different committees, whether they're public engagement, whether it's code cares, internal affairs, training and development. We have 6 separate committees that are staffed by our frontline staff. And I challenge them all to come up with ideas. Y'all meet once a month and bring me one idea per month that we can implement and innovate. So that way it's not just top down. It's not coming directly from me. Everything doesn't have to come down on from the mountain on a tablet. You guys bring good ideas, you wrap it up in a bowl, you think it out, and you bring it to me, and I'm going to say yes 9 times out of 10, right? And so we're able to accomplish more, cover more ground, and get more energy and buy-in when people feel engaged and a part of building the best code enforcement team in the country.
So, how are you guys still able to, what do you want to call it, maintain the control, over the operation? Because I'm sure that, with you guys being meaningful, to put forth the efforts to continue what you've started, that something has to fall off somewhere.
Mm.
And so that's falling off. Like, how do you decide if you're going to try to come back and pick that up?
Yeah.
Or how does that work?
Yeah. Man, it's the 80-20 rule comes into effect, right?
Oh, wow.
Right.
Okay.
And so you have to prioritize. 80% of your success is going to come from 20% of your efforts. Right. So you find that 20% that's really, really important, and you focus on that. It doesn't mean that the other smaller items that are not low hanging fruit or they're not high priority, doesn't mean you don't do them. But hopefully what happens is that you tackle the high priority issues first, the major stuff first. And then as you solve those problems, you free up time to come back, and come back and get those other issues. And so for me, the messaging looks like to my city manager and to my mayor and council is that, hey, I understand this is a priority. Also, this is a priority. However, we can't have 20 top priorities. This is what we're going to prioritize here. If you agree with this, this is how we'll proceed. We're going to prioritize these issues. These we will still come back for, but this may be in Q3 of next year by the time we can get around to this priority that doesn't affect as many people, doesn't have as large of an impact. Let us focus like a laser on what's most important, what's most impactful. And then trust me, we're going to come back to those other issues, but let us handle this first. So it's a messaging, it's a priority component, and it's a messaging component to help them to understand we only have so many hours in a day and only so many people that can do these tasks. We can't be everywhere at once. We have to prioritize and attack.
So, can you tell us, what does that technique or what does that approach look like? How do you prioritize?
Mm. It is my priority is going to be my boss's priority and the vision of the city. It's measured by what is the biggest impact for the community, right? What's the biggest thing that we can do right now? Where's the fire at this particular time that we can either prevent, control, or just wipe out from existence? We're handling that first. There's a book called Eat the Frog, and so what it talks about is the scariest thing on your plate, the thing that you don't want the most, which in this case is that frog. You eat that frog first. Whatever you don't want to do, that's probably where you need to go first, is to tackle that big issue. And that's been my approach, is take the biggest challenge first and then work down the line from there.
So, how do you build trust between residents and the government?
It's harder now more than ever. Lots of disinformation, misinformation. You have people that are on social media warriors that are out there, that they get a lot of pleasure from being engaged, but they tend to focus on the negative, right? Because that keyboard gives you a lot of power, right? Where you can post anonymous things and you can tear down and right, you can really pick apart everything that your government is doing. And with the level of distrust we have right now from the federal government all the way down, it can't help but trickle down to local government. And we see it. We see that trickle down effect where people are very much distrustful. Everything is a money grab or a tax grab or some type of infringement on your rights. And so we combat that. It's a day-to-day battle, but we combat it with education, with showing up, being responsive. I have a list of core values that I take wherever I go. As I mentioned, the strategy changes along with the personnel, along with the environment. But what I can take no matter where I go are core values, and that's C for customer service, O for organizational excellence, R for rapid responsiveness, and E for empathetic engagement. You put that together, it spells court. And so the first letter is customer service. We have to be there. My job as a government employee is literally to work for the people. That's literally my job. If I ever lose sight of that, then I've lost sight of the goalpost. That they do pay my salary to, and we're here as a government, local, state, or federal. Our sole purpose is to serve them. That's it. We would not exist if we were not there to serve the people of this city. And so that's what I preach to the team. That's what I try to, symbolize and model myself, is that we take care of the customer. We take care of the citizen. And that's how we build trust. Doing what we say we're going to do, operating in excellent fashion, responding rapidly, and then enforcing, but having that empathy to go along with it to balance it out.
You know, your city is lucky to have you as code enforcement.
Thank you, sir.
They're really lucky to have you. What does a high-performing code compliance team look like?
Looks like the city of Garland. Oh man. No, all jokes aside, man, it looks like a city that a team that is focused on what's important, and that is serving the people, increasing quality of life, increasing property value, as gentleman put in the chat earlier, Mr. Kellen put in the chat earlier, increasing the economic prospects of a city, changing the outlook, changing the pride in that community, and just being responsive. And also, if you can, our side job is the Code Cares. If you have that capability to reach out and engage on a different level that's a little bit outside of what you do, that really helps build that trust, and it helps to impact the neighborhood. And man, it has we're kind of the glue when it comes to the quality of life. So when done correctly, the neighborhoods look better, they're safer, they're cleaner, they're more enjoyable.
So how do you measure success in your department?
I have several key performance indicators, right? So some are tangible. Some things that we do to measure success are tangible. Some are intangible. So our KPIs could include how quickly we respond. Charles, when you send a complaint in on 123 Smith Street, how quickly do we respond to you? How quickly do we address the issue? And how quickly do we get it cleaned up, bringing it to compliance? So we're measuring all those things. We're measuring how quickly we can demolish blighted properties. How many can we demolish in a year? We can demolish that property. We change the character of that entire neighborhood. If we can fast track that and run those problematic cases through the system quickly, we can change the character of that community. So we're measuring that. We're measuring our Code Cares engagement. How many yards have we cut for our elderly and our disabled veterans, right? How many of those engagement activities have we done? How many community events have we gone to build trust? All right, so some of that you can't measure trust. That's something you cannot put on a spreadsheet. But we can measure our responsiveness, we can measure our performance, and we can measure the amount of work that we're putting into our community engagement efforts.
So let's transition over to community engagement and Code Cares, because, when I read your bio and when it mentioned that you are the creator, as well as when we spoke about you being the creator of Code Cares and what it has done and the national look on that program, that's more than innovation. That's more than creativity. That's got to be coming from somewhere within. What led you to come up with Code Cares, and how did it take off to get this kind of recognition?
Yeah. So great question. So let me just clarify that there have been other programs. We were not, I can't take credit for the concept of helping out the community and performing, pro bono acts for the community. There's some giants whose shoulders I stand on in code enforcement, right? That had great programs, great communication, and great outreach. So I model off of some of those predecessors that really laid the groundwork for what we're doing. And I took advice and I watched what they did, and I took what I could take and implemented in my own way, right? So I don't want to take credit for being the originator of it, by no means, but I certainly made it a key part of what we do. And man, it comes from, when I'm talking to people, Charles, it's, man, that could be my mother, my aunt, man. I grew up, not, we weren't poor. I was in a, fairly middle class situation, but I have friends and relatives, and I knew enough about hard times to be able to empathize with hard times, right? With people that just don't have the educational level, don't have the financial means, don't have the knowledge, or just whatever they're lacking, right? And so I relate to them as if that's my auntie, that's my grandmother, right? It could be, right? So approaching it from that level and seeing how we could assist, because me put another citation on this elderly disabled gentleman, it's not going to help his situation, right? It's going to make it worse. I want to help you keep your house and keep it in good shape. If there's something that we can do as a government entity, then hey man, I think we're duty bound to try to find a way.
So, can you tell us what inspired the creation of the program?
Necessity is the mother of invention, right? The need was there, right? So that empathy is something, you mentioned, correctly so, that empathy is something that's within. Character, morals are something that's within. And when you see someone, man, they're doing the best they can, right? They're doing the best they can. I want to find a way to help them. I don't want to bring the sword out every time, right? You want to find a way that you can help benefit these people. And so I'm being asked to do my job is to bring this property into compliance. And when I go talk to that man, that woman, that family, and I see what they're going through, I want to help them get to that point. And me writing a gang of citations, it's not only not helping, it's going to hurt them further, put them further in a financial bind. So what else can we do? Can we be creative? And so, for instance, in South Fulton, we have a Home Depot, we have a Lowe's, we have other hardware stores that are there. And so one step that we took was saying, well, hey, how can we be being lean, right? How can we be creative about this? Now, you Fortune 500 companies, Home Depot is headquartered in Georgia. You guys make a lot of money in our city, right? We have our residents come, they spend millions of dollars with you every single year. Man, it would be nice if y'all would partner with us and donate supplies, materials, and manpower as the need arises. And so having those conversations with those business owners, with those companies, with those general managers, and they were willing. In most cases, they were willing to come to our aid and come to the aid of the residents that support them every day.
So, how did the seniors and the vulnerable residents respond to the initiative?
And they were so thankful, so thankful. I think to one of our first projects in South Fulton, it was an older female. I had to be 89, 90 years old, and she was a doctor, but she just lost it. She couldn't take care of her property. So we put together resources, came to her assistance, and man, that was my first experience with Code Cares, having implemented it. And it really sealed the deal for myself and for the team, just on her reaction, on what it meant to her. Right, I'm talking tears of joy and appreciation that we would come out and spend that time to bring her property up to where she was used to keeping it, where she would feel comfortable going outside and just enjoying her front porch. Man, it was beautiful. So yeah, the reaction is great, man. But that's not what, whether we get an attaboy or any type of verbal acknowledgement. Um, we do it because it's the right thing to do. But oftentimes we do get that recognition, and it goes a long way to keep us going.
Can you tell us how many people, how many properties per community, have you had to deal with at one time that it got to the point where it may have seemed to be a little bit overwhelming?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the tough part. We don't typically advertise it for that very reason. You know, Charles, if we put something out and we put up a bat signal that said, "Hey, we're giving out free lawn care and we're going to clean your house up, and it's not going to cost you a dime, and we're going to come to you," we would get requests out of the woodworks, right? So we do it on a case by case basis, so it doesn't grow beyond our means, because again, this is a side hustle for us, if you will, right? It's not our day job. We're doing it on volunteer hours, and we're coming out on Saturdays and off hours to perform the work, or we're connecting with volunteers. So it's a labor of love in that respect. So we can get a backlog from time to time, but we try to keep it on a real case by case basis, so it doesn't spiral too far out of our hands.
So, what does compassionate enforcement look like in practice?
I think it looks like, what we're talking about. We're having programs. One, you want to educate people. You don't want to, there's a saying in the law that, buyer beware, or the ignorance of the law is no excuse. And that's true, right? We all obligated to know. We don't get a pass for not knowing. But it's helpful if we make every effort to give the community enough opportunity to know what we do. Everybody may not know these regulations. So we start with that education, and then how we treat people when we interact with them. Right? We're not coming as a police force, an occupying force. And believe it or not, we get a lot of pushback. Right? We're like police without the badges and without the guns. Right? And so we're coming onto your personal property, Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith. We're coming onto your personal property, telling you what you can and can't do on your own property that you pay taxes on. So
Right.
we get a lot of pushback on that. Who are you to tell me what I can do on my property? It's different. It's different with the police, right? You're getting pulled over in your car. You understand you've done something wrong, more than likely, and you're compliant with that officer. We're knocking on your door, telling you about something that you may have no idea is a violation, and it's your property. So the first step in many cases is getting overcoming that barrier of communication, of just explaining who we are, what do we do, why are we here, are we even allowed to enforce what we're enforcing? So it's a respect thing, right? It's a treating someone with respect. We're not coming with an aggressive demeanor. We're listening, we're patient, and we educate.
So, why is community engagement essential to code compliance?
Well, without it, you're an occupying force. You're an enemy of the community, right? Or you can be perceived that way. If you don't have a connection, and they don't understand, because we haven't done a good enough job to explain our purpose and our why. Why are we here? Not here to police you or make your life difficult. We're here for your benefit. We're here for the well-being of the community. So it all circles around again and again to customer service and to education, right? Of explaining our purpose and why it benefits the community that we're here to serve.
So, why is community engagement? Well, what are the biggest barriers residents face in maintaining compliance? And I'm asking this question because, it's with the understanding that we know that there are some communities and there are some people that really don't understand code or know that code enforcement is really there to do that
Mhm.
particular kind of work. So, can you answer when you answer that question? Can you help our people to understand, what's the real reason behind you guys having to maintain that compliance?
Mm. Charles, repeat the first part of that question. Could you say that over again for me, sir?
Yes. What are the biggest barriers residents
Mhm.
face in maintaining
Got it.
compliance?
Got it. Knowledge and money. in, in a nutshell, man. Some just don't know. They don't have the knowledge of it. Maybe you're a first time homeowner,
Right.
right? And you could be 30, 40, 50, 60, and you're just now getting into home ownership, God bless you, right? But you don't know what it takes to maintain a home or what your obligations and responsibilities are. So we're coming to educate you. So that's a knowledge issue. And so, cut your grass, don't put your trash out here. Man, take your grill, put it in the backyard. Let's keep that in the back, right? Let's keep the toys off the lawn. Just certain things that may have seemed normal in their environment or was they were accustomed to. But hey, here are our standards. Here's what we want the neighborhood to reflect, and here's why. So that's the knowledge piece. That's an easier hurdle to climb. Now, circling back to our some of our elders that want to age in place in their home. Now, what happens when that house is 40 years old, 50 years old, and the roof is collapsing, or you have structural damage, right? You have severe plumbing issues that that can't be fixed with a lawnmower and a quick cleanup. So now we're talking tens of thousands of dollars, right? So that financial component is where it really we really have to get creative and just work with the property owners the best that we can.
So, how do you partner with nonprofits, churches, and community groups?
Yeah, we actively seek them out, Charles. Um, so here in Garland, we have something called the Garland Brotherhood, which is a group of seven black churches, and they have community groups that ministries that they come together and they do certain work. So we'll actively seek out those organizations, our fraternal organizations, nonprofits. They're not going to, a lot of times people have the desire to help. They may have the means to help, but they just don't know how. And so we reach out to them. We have a robust volunteer network that we make it easy. So you can sign up through a portal, and we'll have certain events that are listed. If you want to volunteer for a creek cleanup, then you can volunteer here on this date. If you want to volunteer to cut Miss Jones' yard, you can volunteer here and sign up on this date. And so when we engage with those nonprofits and those community groups, those churches, those mosques, those synagogues, um, we'll make that the center point. We're asking for volunteers at your own time, at your convenience, for a project that you're passionate about. And you can sign up right here, pick your project, come out, give us 2 hours. And that's our pitch to them. Just 2 hours once a month or whenever you have time to do it. You'll feel better and the community will be better as a
As a
result.
result. What is the most memorable Code Cares project you've been a part of?
Um, so the first one is always, that was always memorable. But we've had a few other significant ones I can think of. We've partnered with some church organizations where we did. These guys came from Arkansas, if I'm not mistaken. They
Oh,
came.
wow.
This is back when I was in Georgia. They came from a few states over, and we got connected through them through a church group, and they were looking for projects. They were coming, they were traveling looking for projects, and they heard about the program and they reached out to us, and we were able to, with their help, knock out 20 projects in the span of 3 days. And so they worked around the clock. They just took out all of these backlog of cases that we did have, and it made a huge impact in that community. And so it was covered, got a lot of coverage behind that one, but it was just really impactful to be able to help that many people in that short a period of time.
So, how do you ensure residents feel supported rather than targeted?
Just having those conversations, right? Having those conversations, listening, being empathetic. We do have a job to do, right? We're here to gain compliance, but we can be reasonable and understanding as we do it. So we're not gonna get them all. Everybody's not gonna be a fan, right? And that's one thing I've learned. And though I'm not a politician, I never want to be one. But it is political. But one thing I learned about politics is that you're never going to please everybody, right? So I can't try, Charles, because what I focus on for myself and my team is doing the right thing, right? Operating with integrity, operating with empathy, and doing the right thing. We're not going to be able to help everybody. We can't save everybody, right? We're going to do what we can do, and we can sleep at night knowing that we have gone above and beyond even what's expected, even what's in the job description. We've gone above and beyond that, and we can sleep at night. But there's some that they're gonna be mad no matter what, right? They're not gonna like what we do. It doesn't matter what I do. We could paint the house, clean it up, and right, all the bells and whistles, but they'll still have some naysayers out there. So I don't focus on that. We focus on the people that we can help, and then we focus on the general well-being of the city, right? It's hard to please 250,000 people at once. Good luck trying to do that, right? You will drive yourself crazy if that's your goal, right? But we're laser focused on what our goals are, and as long as we're doing that, then hey, everything else will work itself out.
So when we chatted, we discussed, the Black History part of the show, where I told you we do Black History 365, and I asked you who were the most influential persons in your life and career.
Yeah.
You told me Marcus Garvey, Barack Obama, and Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Can you tell us first, why is Black History personally meaningful to you?
Simple question, man. It's complex. One, man, I've been Black all my life. Man, you got to know where you come from. History is important, man, and without diving too deep into that, our history has been tainted from us, has been taken from us in many ways, right? And so that's a root cause when we're talking about our economic position. We're talking about our ownership in our neighborhoods and our ownership in communities. We're talking about our political power, our positional power in America. You can't look at that accurately and understand why we're here without understanding the history, without understanding our history. It's not that we're not capable of doing certain things, right? Of achieving just like the next person. But understanding how we were affected by different policies and practices, including slavery and Jim Crow and post-Reconstruction, right? That's very important to understand when it comes to why we're positioned the way we're positioned, and most importantly, how you can correct it. So it's important for me to know who I am, to learn and research. Sometimes we have to look a little bit harder to find out who we are. So it's very important. So I can help pass that on to my son and to my younger generations. So we know we have a legacy to uphold. So first we got to know it, and then we can pass it on and attain those heights that we're capable of attaining.
So, what does Marcus Garvey's philosophy of self-determination mean in your work?
Don't expect no handouts.
Well,
Don't expect no hand. Nah, check me out. Do for self. Do for self. Self-determination. While we can depend on this program and that program, and many of them are well intentioned and well deserved and much needed. But if you're sitting waiting on that, right? If you're waiting on a check to come, if you're waiting on a program to come, if you're waiting on the government to come save you, right, and get you out of your condition, or you waiting on anything or anybody else to come save you out of your condition, then you may be waiting for a long time. However, if you make your mind up that self-determination, that you have the ability and the skill to pull yourself up, and if you have the ability to make your own, I was about to say pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but don't take that the wrong way, right? But if you have the ability to get yourself out of your situation, self-determination, it doesn't mean that these things aren't owed to you, or that you haven't been wronged in some kind of way. But Will Smith says, hey, it may not be my fault, but it's my obligation to solve this issue. I may be in this position to no fault of my own, but it's my obligation, it's my responsibility to solve it.
well, now what I'm talking about was not from that perspective of just of a culture. I'm talking about in your work. So so you're saying that when dealing with people in your work, when it comes to code enforcement, is this? I don't think that that's what you mean by their self-determination. Is that looking at the self-determination is what you're saying is how you're able to look at that in order to see if hands are needed to be lended, is what you're saying,
Okay.
right?
All right. So
that's kind of like what you're saying, right?
well, let me answer it differently then. From that determination, from a work perspective.
Yeah.
We're talking from the perspective of the people that we're serving.
Yes.
Okay, got you. So that's a different question. I would say that everybody has a responsibility to do for self and has the ability, right?
Mhm.
And so the line that I draw, not even consciously, but the line I draw is those that can do and those that can't do, right? So if you do have self-determination, you have the ability, the physical ability, the financial ability to correct your situation, my empathy meter is turned up or turned down accordingly, right? Because you have the means, you have the money, you have the ability, you're able-bodied, you just don't want to do it. Well, my empathy is going to be a little bit less, right? Because you have the self-determination, you have the ability to do it. And then you have those that just really don't have it, right? There's no way they can make it happen. And so, but even in that case, I'm still looking for one of the questions I'm asking before we offer our services to help you. All right, so I understand that you can't yourself come into compliance, right? Because of your physical, financial situation. But we'll see where this grandmother has an able-bodied grandson or son that lives there or close by. You may not get that service. I need to talk to your son first. I need to talk to your grandson first. And so if you have an able-bodied young man in that house, then he need to get out here and cut this grass and pick that trash up because he probably put it down there in the first place. We're not just going to enable that behavior, right? So we're going to hold some accountability. And then we have a program where we have tools. Hey, if the issue is, hey, he doesn't have a tool, doesn't have a lawnmower, doesn't know how to work it, we'll bring you a lawnmower and we'll show you how to work it, right? You just bring it back to us, or we'll come back and pick it up. So We want to alleviate all excuses to self-determination. We want you to be able to fish for yourself, right? Versus us bringing you a fish every time you're hungry. Because that's a state of constant dependency. That's not what we're trying to create. That's not empathy. That is over empathizing when you create a system of total dependency, total reliance. You're not really helping that individual unless they just simply can't help themselves whatsoever.
How has Barack Obama influenced your leadership style?
Mm. And President Obama, excuse me, is smooth, um, classy, man. To face what he faced, being the first at anything, right? As a black man, as a woman, as a Latino American, as whatever you're the first in, um, whether it's sex, race, sexual orientation, being the first in any space is a challenge, unbelievable challenge, unbelievable amount of pressure. Um, and you magnify that by a millionfold being the first black president and the pressure that he must have faced while maintaining his dignity through insults and through certain treatment that he received, and maintaining that integrity and not allowing it to crack him or break him, right? He remained that same figure, that same image, which is important for us. As we're growing up, our parents and grandparents say you can be anything you want to be, even the president, but you can't until you see it with your own eyes. Now you can believe it a little bit more, right? Because it's been done. That glass ceiling has been broken. So I just admire his courage, his calm, his steady, easy manner, and just the ability to work through all of those pressures and get things done for 8 years.
So, what lessons from Malcolm X guide your approach to truth and accountability?
Hmm. What I admire most about Brother Malcolm is honesty, right? Not knowledge and honesty. It's one thing to be honest and you don't know what you're talking about, but to be a scholar, um, to have a depth of knowledge that he had, and to be unapologetic in speaking that truth to power, being courageous when you know that the result will likely be your demise, right? And to still be willing to say it with your chest, as they say these days, right? Malcolm would say it with his chest, and knowing what the repercussions probably would be, right? So that courage, that intellect, and that bravery stick out.
So, final question for you. How do these three figures collectively shape your worldview?
Hmm. We're talking Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, President Obama. Collectively, they are a reminder of an obligation that I have, a legacy of greatness that's inherent in all people, including um, black men and black women, right? Not to take anything else from anybody else, but we're sorely lacking those images and those reminders. And so you're making me think deep about this, but it reminds me of my obligation to, even on a smaller microscopic level compared to those giants, but on a smaller level, to be some type of inspiration or some type of light for somebody that's watching me, that's looking at what's possible in this realm, right? That maybe I'm showing a path for somebody else, that of what's possible for somebody that looks like and talks like and is from where I'm from. and they can do something pretty big too.
So, in closing, what are some words of wisdom and encouragement do you have for our audience?
Hmm.
Tell them how they can connect with you via social media. If there's any websites you want them to view where you're on, what are those good things?
Okay. All right. I'll start with. I'm not one to give much advice, but one thing I would say is ABG. ABG. Always be growing. If you're not growing, you're stagnant, you're going backwards. So, study whatever your trade, whatever your profession, whatever your passion is, always be looking to grow and expand and grow and develop um, throughout your years, right? And look for ways to bring that impact to others, right? As far as my contact information, the best place to reach out to me is on LinkedIn. Pretty visible on LinkedIn where I connect. I'm not big on other social media. I'll tune in every now and then, but my social interaction is on LinkedIn. But happy to connect with and looking forward to connect. So please, anybody that's on this podcast, on this great podcast, reach out to me. Let me know that you heard. Let me know what you thought. Um, good, bad, or ugly. I want to hear it all. Right. Let me know what you think, and would love to connect with you in any way that I can support you, and we can support each other. I am 100% on that page as we all can grow together. There's enough out here for us to all partake. And if we help each other, as we bring it back to our original point, if we collectively um, invest with each other, whether that's financially, mentally, or we just support each other, the more successful we can all become. So I truly believe in that. And man, look forward to talking with you all. And Charles, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. So before I close, because I have a closing monologue that I'm going to do, I just want to say to you that I really appreciate you being here and you helping to give us some understanding and some sense of being as to the importance of the work you do in code enforcement. Because, there are a lot of places, lots of parts of towns that, I mean, they're all over this country, that they are just raggedy. And we know that when someone has to come in and clean that up, that's you guys. But now people have a sense of understanding the importance of code enforcement and why they must maintain or should want to maintain, maintenance on properties. And when I finish with this monologue, can you hang around for a few minutes for me?
Sure.
All right. So, in closing, I want to say, Brian, I want to thank you for your work, because your work reminds us that leadership is not always glamorous, but it is always necessary. You stand at the intersection of policy, people, and progress, where the decisions you make directly shape the lives of families, seniors, children, and entire neighborhoods. You've shown us that code compliance is not just about correcting violations, it's about restoring dignity, protecting communities, and building a foundation where people can thrive. Your journey is a testament to what happens when purpose meets preparation, when compassion meets structure, and when a leader chooses to serve with integrity. You are proof that public service, when done right, is one of the highest forms of love for our community. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your vision. And thank you for showing America what it looks like when we build stronger neighborhoods together. This has been America in Black and White. I'm your host, Charles King, and good night. And we will see you guys again tomorrow night.